Representative Bob Barrett joins me now to talk about his alternative to the Minnesota Vikings Stadium funding. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
You're quite welcome, Julie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Representative Barrett, let's talk a little bit about your idea. E-pull-tabs not bringing in the revenue expected. That's not a surprise to anybody, but why not wait it out?
Well, I don't think e-pull-tabs will ever get to the level we need it to be. I mean, we are 95% short. That's pretty significant shortfall. And so going from 5% to 100 anytime soon is just really not realistic. I happen to think the median of playing an iPad is a lot different than, you know, getting 10, 20 paper tabs and playing with 4 friends a year over the evening. It's just a different mindset. One's a singular event, the other is more social. I don't think it will ever get to the level that they ever expected it to, and which is sad because we built a billion-dollar stadium on the promise that e-pull-tabs would pay for the public portion, and it just won't get there.
And so you are proposing naming rights and personal seat licenses using that revenue. You said in your news conference that the research is based off of what's being done in San Francisco.
Sure.
Could you elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. You know, in San Francisco, they had the same issue we have. In fact, they have an older stadium, Candlestick Park. It was built in the 1960s. They played there forever. Really not a great stadium. We don't have a good stadium in the Metrodome. They've been trying forever to build one. Finally, they came upon the right answer, which is a partnership with the city of Santa Clara. They would sell PSLs, personal seat licenses, naming rights. All that would come into a kind of a public pot, and hopefully that money would fund the building of a stadium, and it did. They've received over $1 billion in PSL and naming right revenue up to date. Now, it'll be a year until they open it, so they have another year to add to that. But right now, what they've done is a success. That plan should be modeled, and I'd like to model it here. And I'd like to do it in a very conservative way. In other words, I don't think we're going to get $1 billion from naming rights in Minnesota or personal seat licenses. We don't need to. We could get a third of that, and we could still improve upon what we have now, which is taxpayer funding for a $1 billion stadium.
And so that's your idea. Let's talk about the next step for it then. First of all, how can you try to get the Wilfs on board with an idea like this? Because, I mean, frankly, that revenue would be, as you said, public dollars versus private dollars. At this point, it appears to be going to the owners of the team.
Well, we need to put leverage on them. You know, up until now, they've had the whole leverage. Their leverage has fallen a little bit because of what's happened out in New Jersey. So they should be a little less confident than they were 2 months ago. I want to use that to do what we should have done a year and a half ago, which was negotiate in a very, very fair and business-like fashion so we get a good deal for the taxpayer of Minnesota. And we don't have that now. I'd like that to happen. Specifically why they would want this deal? Well, right now they're saying they're contributing $477 million to the stadium. They're not. That money is coming from private sources. They actually might make money on the stadium. So if they're making money and the taxpayers are contributing about $500 million, both city, Minneapolis, and state, that's a problem. And I think a lot of people are fed up with that. They don't like it. So this bill, my bill, would actually reduce their contribution. It would reduce it from $477 million to $200 million, with one exception. That $200 million has to come out of their own pocket. The value of their team, the Vikings, has gone up $200 million, according to Forbes. They do an annual survey of teams, and they think that the Vikings organization has gone up $200 million. So given that, I think they should be able to contribute $200 million out of their own pocket.
Given that you did come up with some stadium funding alternatives during the last legislative session, do you think there's much of an appetite this late in the game to change things so dramatically?
Well, I hope so. You know, am I naive? No. Obviously, it's late in the game. However, if you know the legislature, as you do, Julie, you know that the best work, or at least the most work, happens during the last day or two. And I think using that concept, I think there's plenty of time. We don't have a contract with the Vikings. A lot of people think we do. We don't have a contract. All we have is legislation. That contract is currently being worked on. Until that contract is signed by both parties, we have time.
Are you considering working through various, there are a lot of different alternatives there. You've got the Legislative Commission on Minnesota Sports Facilities. Have you approached them? You said you were going to approach the governor.
Right.
You know, how do you maneuver this so quickly with all of the different tentacles that are out there?
Great question. I think it's pretty simple. I think Governor Dayton was the head cheerleader initially. He's the one that everyone followed initially to get the pull tabs out and to get that passed through the legislature. He is the person we need to talk to convince. If we can convince Governor Dayton that this is a better approach, and it is a better approach, if we can convince him, all of that will fall by. It will come into line.
We're talking about what could be done now, sooner rather than later. Let's just say the contract gets signed, everything goes on as scheduled. How would you like to approach this come 2014? Will you drop it? Will you pursue it? Working under the assumption that a contract is signed
Sure.
and things are going in place.
Well, it depends on what's in the contract. I'd want to look at the contract, review it to see if there are any other stipulations that might allow for us opening it up. So that's one area. Another area is the fact that Governor Dayton would like next year to be an unsession in which we repeal things that need to be repealed. So given that logic, given how expensive the stadium is, given how much the taxpayers are contributing, in which they were told they wouldn't contribute anything, it was all going to be run by pull tabs or funded by pull tabs, I think this would be the most important thing to unfund or have in an unsession. I mean, it lines up pretty well given what Governor Dayton has said he'd like to accomplish. He also said that he wanted to wait on the warehouse tax repeal, and he wanted to wait to eliminate the tax on the ags and the farm repair tax. So he has said those things can wait until February, March. Well, if those things can wait, those are upwards of $100 million or more. This is bigger. We should be able to tackle this issue too. It's similar to the other things we've been talking about and Governor Dayton's wanted to wait until the spring.
We're just about out of time. You were up there solo today.
Sure.
Do you think you can rally the legislative troops if necessary?
Definitely. Again, it all comes down to Governor Dayton. If Governor Dayton wants this to change and do the right thing and require the Wolves to contribute $200 million, it will happen. If he doesn't, it probably won't happen.
Okay, Representative Bob Barrett, thank you for taking time to come in and talk about this issue. We will, of course, track it as it continues on.
Sounds good. Thank you.